Welcome to True Crime Nest. Today's case was about Cameron Lockwood. At 28 years old, he had achieved considerable heights in his career as a software developer. His technical knowledge and calm, composed manner made him a sought-after expert at a high-tech development corporation in Indianapolis. Despite his professional success, Cameron's personal life stayed empty and lonely. That March evening, Cameron had no clue his life was about to change. He had been invited to a tech conference, and as is often the case, a casual meal with colleagues followed the formal part. It was there, amid the lively crowd, that his eye was pulled to Leah Streetclair. She stood out among the others. Her sparkling grin and confidence in every move were instantly noticed. Leah was a little older, 31 years old, and she had already found her place in life, holding a top position at a huge corporation. Her natural confidence initially drew Cameron in. Leah wasn't like the normal women Cameron had dated. Her ability to start up a conversation, her humor, and her wit created a lasting effect on him. They spent the whole evening together, talking not just about work, but also their aspirations and hobbies. Cameron, normally reserved, found himself chatting to Leah as if she were an old friend. She was the first lady with whom he felt a feeling of comfort and a natural connection. Barely a month after they met, Cameron and Leah began dating. Their meetings were packed with excitement, passion, and the notion that they had discovered something more in one another than simply love. Cameron felt that Leah understood him in a way no one else did. They drove around the Indianapolis region, visited museums and parks, and spent nights debating films and novels. Leah's inner world was as complex as her outside attractiveness. She might be funny and entertaining, but also enigmatic and complicated. Leah maintained her own troubles under control. Cameron felt like he knew everything about her, yet occasionally, particularly when it came to her history, she would deflect or shift the topic with a joke. Cameron didn't think much of it, attracted by the vitality Leah brought into his life. 3 months into their relationship, Cameron made the first significant step when he encouraged Leah to move in with him. Cameron's house in the peaceful suburbs of Indianapolis was a sanctuary, a place where he could concentrate on business and relax from the city's rush and bustle. Leah consented, and from that point, their connection became even closer. Life with Leah was full of happy times. She liked preparing meals. They hosted house parties for close friends, and they planned about their future together. Unfortunately, as the wedding neared, Leah's behavior started to shift significantly. She got more uptight at times, sometimes withdrawing inside herself. However, Cameron tried not to notice. He was in love and eager to make Leah his wife. 6 months after they met, Cameron proposed to Leah at one of their favorite settings, by the lake in a park near their house. It was a sunny evening when Leah, standing beneath an ancient oak tree, watched Cameron descend on one knee and draw out a ring. Leah answered yes, her eyes gleaming with excitement, and at that moment, their lives appeared perfect. The wedding took place only a few weeks after their engagement. It was a modest yet exquisite event with just close friends and relatives. Leah looked great in a modest but exquisite outfit. There was a calm assurance in her eyes, but only Cameron knew how anxious she had been before the wedding. He felt it was just pre-wedding jitters. Life after the wedding looked like paradise. Their modest house was full of laughter, ideas for the future, and chats about children. Cameron was at the top of happiness, believing every day that he had finally discovered his genuine other half. Despite her occasional periods of contemplation, Leah remained the fountain of brightness that had burst into his life only a few months ago. However, behind this flawless exterior, shadows were creeping that Cameron had yet to see. The summer of 2012 became a pivotal moment for Cameron. Immediately after the wedding, he saw changes in Leah's conduct. In the first weeks after the wedding, their life was virtually idyllic. Long hours in their cozy house, chats about the future and dreams. But later, he started to notice something weird. Leah frequently secluded herself. She hesitated with her replies and avoided themes relating to her past. When Cameron softly attempted to question her about her upbringing or former relationships, Leah successfully shifted the topic or smiled it off with a joke. Although these instances sparked a tiny uneasiness in Cameron, he didn't want to concentrate on them. believing that time would tell everything. One of the first warning signs was the phone calls. During the summer, Leah started getting weird calls on her mobile phone. Anytime Cameron was close, Leah would go quiet or leave the room, stating it was just work colleagues. Cameron tried not to read too much into it, but noted that after these chats, Leah would become distant and lost in thought. Her attitude might flip, going from cheery and enthusiastic to introverted and somber. Externally, it looked like regular mood fluctuations, but they occurred too often to go ignored. During mid-July, the situation deteriorated. Cameron started to observe that Leah was spending more time away from home, often without explanation. She mentioned it was work-related, that she frequently had to meet with customers or attend projects that necessitated her presence. Nevertheless, when Cameron sought to understand more about her profession or meetings, Leah swiftly shut down the chat. She got increasingly irritated, particularly when Cameron sought to touch on her past. It was as if an invisible wall would emerge between them every time the discourse wandered to that issue. At this point, Cameron began to believe that Leah was concealing something. While he didn't know what, he attempted to trust her, believing that his affection for her was real and deep. Yet, his fear increased with each passing day. Cameron also started noting another element. Leah sometimes isolated herself in the bathroom for lengthy hours, particularly in the mornings. When he attempted to check if she was well, she would respond shortly, plainly not wanting to discuss it. In early August, Cameron saw another troubling indicator. Unexpected calls started flowing to their house phone. The guy on the other end would quickly hang up any time Cameron answered, but when Leah picked up, she would stroll into another room, speaking quietly and briefly as if someone was scrutinizing her every word. Cameron attempted asking her who was calling, but Leah would say that it was just old pals she didn't want to discuss. Meanwhile, Leah was sliding more into her own anxieties. Recollections of the days when she began her quest of change kept flashing in her head. Waves of anguish, estrangement, and anxiety returned to her life, as if these events were not part of the past but her present. Leah frequently pondered about the times when she chose to transition, undergo operations, and accept her real self. These memories tormented her as the world she had constructed on love may fall at any moment if Cameron found out the truth. One night, Leah woke up in a chilly perspiration, overwhelmed by panic. In her dream, she had once again witnessed memories from her past. The moments before she began her transformation, when society didn't accept her and internal worries accompanied her every step. Waking up, Leah discovered Cameron quietly asleep next to her. She gazed at him, knowing his love was true, but she worried how long it would endure if he knew her truth. By the end of the summer, Leah had grown even more reclusive. She struggled to preserve the facade of a regular existence for Cameron, while within, a true fight was waging. At times, she looked at Cameron with sorrow, as if bidding farewell to what they had. Her concerns heightened, particularly when Randall, an old friend, got increasingly hostile. She attempted to cope with it on her own, without involving Cameron, hopeful she could tackle the problem before her world fully fell apart. Cameron started observing another difference. Leah was avoiding physical closeness. The intense and heartfelt times they had formerly enjoyed became unusual. She constantly found reasons: tiredness, job stress. This just heightened his worry. Cameron sensed that their connection, once so intimate and loving, was progressively cooling, though he couldn't comprehend why. This was a summer that the shadows of Lee's past started to gradually permeate her life, with Randall playing a significant part. He was a man she had known far longer than she wished to recall. Long before her shift, when Leah lived a different life under a different name, Randall had been deeply engaged in unlawful operations. Leah, under immense strain, had become enmeshed in them, leading to hazardous times where every day was fraught with anxiety over exposure and possible repercussions. She had believed she left that life behind as she changed her identity. However, in August 2012, Randall resurfaced, becoming her greatest fear. At first, it was just phone calls from unknown numbers, which she ignored, hoping he would vanish as quickly as he had returned. But soon, the situation escalated to personal encounters. One day, Leah received the message detailing the location of an abandoned cafe on the outskirts of Indianapolis. Faced with the threat of exposure, she saw no alternative but to attend the meeting. When she arrived, her heart raced, knowing deep down that no good would come from it. The cafe, with its crumbling walls and graffiti-covered surfaces, exuded a sinister atmosphere. Randall was already there, seated at one of the dilapidated tables, his expression stern, eyes icy and calculating. It quickly became apparent that his intentions extended far beyond simple blackmail. He knew too much about her past, not just her transformation, but also their shared history. "I know you're trying to put it all behind you," Randall remarked, his voice low and menacing. "But the past isn't something you can simply throw away." He withdrew a small piece of paper from his pocket and placed it on the table before her. It was a bank statement, and the amount $50,000 made her flinch. Randall demanded money in exchange for his silence regarding her past. Leah realized that if he informed Cameron, the world she had painstakingly crafted would shatter. She could no longer control her destiny. Randall held all the cards. After that encounter, Leah felt increasingly uneasy. She had no idea how to acquire such a significant sum of money, nor did she want to deal with Randall again. On the other hand, being discovered threatened to ruin her marriage and the social life she had built. As the tension mounted, Leah started to avoid Cameron even more. She did want him to see her dread or her rising anxiety. Yet at night, her worries came to fruition, haunting her dreams where Randall obliterated everything she held dear. Things worsened when Randall began showing up near their house. Leah spotted his vehicle parked across the street several times over the week. He didn't ring the doorbell or approach the home, but his presence was unsettling. Leah felt imprisoned, unsure of what to do. She knew every action could lead to disaster, yet postponing a decision would only worsen her situation. Meanwhile, Randall continued to harass Leah, sending threatening emails that hinted at exposing her secrets if she didn't comply. One message chilled her to the bone. "How do you think your spouse will react when he finds out who you truly are? How long will your wonderful life last then?" Leah felt utterly trapped. She began devising ways to gather the money Randall wanted, convinced she had no other options. She managed to scrape together a small amount, but it was only a fraction of what he demanded. She was haunted by the thought that if Randall deemed her offer inadequate, he might escalate his threats, tearing her life apart piece by piece. During one of their meals, Leah tried to confide in Cameron about her stress, blaming it on work and personal concerns. Cameron, noticing her odd behavior, offered support, but Leah couldn't reveal the real cause of her anxiety. She was terrified that exposing the truth would result in a reaction worse than Randall's extortion. The tension escalated further when Leah received another message from Randall, demanding a meeting. His tone had turned increasingly belligerent and nasty. Leah knew she was in emotional and possibly physical danger. Preparing herself to confront him again, she realized she had to be extremely careful. Randall was becoming more dangerous, and his demands were becoming intolerable. By early September, Cameron Lockwood felt as if the ground was crumbling beneath him. Leah had become so distant in recent weeks that her very presence at home felt alien. Dinners were somber, and the late-night conversations that once brought them joy had become rare. Cameron sensed that Leah was hiding something, but it was more than just strange phone calls and unexplained absences. His suspicions heightened one evening when he arrived home early and saw a dark figure through the window, a man standing at the door. Although Cameron couldn't see the man's face, a chill ran down his spine. He knew Leah wasn't expecting anyone at that hour. By the time he entered the home, the man had vanished, but Lee's agitation was palpable. She quickly changed the subject, claiming it was an old acquaintance. Cameron struggled to trust her, simmering with doubt, convinced it was Randall. From that moment, Cameron's doubts morphed into something more sinister: paranoia. He began to follow Leah, feeling he could no longer trust her. Whenever she claimed she was going to work or meeting friends, he observed her from a distance. One day, he saw her meeting Randall in a supermarket parking lot. They exchanged a few quick words, and Leah appeared anxious, while Randall exuded a predatory air. Cameron watched in horror as Leah passed Randall an envelope. In that instant, his world crumbled. He assumed she was cheating on him, though he had no solid evidence, just a devastating image that had taken root in his mind. That night, he found himself unable to sleep, seeking solace in wine. He hoped it would dull the pain and ease his growing doubts, but it only intensified his inner turmoil. Cameron began experiencing nightmares. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw images of Leah abandoning him, her deceit and treachery with that mysterious man. He envisioned them whispering behind his back, Randall dragging her away while he was left alone. These nightmares plagued him, and his behavior grew increasingly erratic. During the day, his imagination played cruel tricks. He saw shadows moving in the corners of rooms and felt the oppressive sensation of being watched. With each passing day, his anxiety deepened. Cameron Lockwood's paranoia deepened. He felt as though his relationship with Leah had become part of a sinister game in which he was merely a pawn. For days, he teetered on the edge of collapse, his paranoid thoughts and suspicions growing with each passing moment. He was convinced that Leah had deceived him, and his inner world was disintegrating. Logic escaped him. His mind was consumed by madness, and he was gradually losing touch with reality. During this turmoil, Leah was preparing for a different kind of confrontation. She was acutely aware of Cameron's mental health struggles and felt ready to have a serious discussion to reveal the truth. Leah had long anticipated this moment, torn between her fear of being exposed and her love for Cameron. Living in lies had become unbearable, and she felt emotionally imprisoned between her tumultuous past and her future with him. Leah hoped to share her history in a secure, supportive environment, but Cameron's mistrust and emotional instability made that a daunting task. On the day she planned to confess, Leah wrote a heartfelt letter detailing her struggles, including Randall's blackmail and her unwavering love for Cameron. She feared that if things went awry, this letter would help him understand her behavior. Meanwhile, Randall intensified the pressure, knowing that Leah was on the brink of a significant revelation. He couldn't allow her to disclose everything, as the truth about his involvement in her past would jeopardize both their lives. Randall devised a sinister plan. Leah had to disappear. Realizing she could no longer endure her life with Cameron, he staged her death to facilitate her escape. That evening, after a grueling day at work, Cameron returned home to find the house dark and silent. He called for Leah but received no answer. Panic surged as he discovered her lifeless body on the floor, surrounded by what appeared to be blood. His world shattered. Guilt and despair consumed him as he tried to wake her, but she remained unresponsive. Unbeknownst to Cameron, this was all part of Randall's meticulously crafted scheme. While Cameron descended into grief, Randall executed his plan, using red liquid to simulate blood and slipping Leah out of the house while Cameron was at work. Leah, consenting to this dangerous choice, knew her life with Cameron was increasingly perilous, and her disappearance was the only way to escape Randall's manipulation. The police were summoned, and Leah was reported missing, with traces of Cameron found at the scene but no concrete evidence. Suspicion quickly fell on him. Randall's inconsistent claims further complicated matters. The narrative emerged that Cameron had killed Leah in a fit of rage, despite the absence of clear evidence. Meanwhile, Randall exploited the situation as a cover for Leah's escape. Cameron was arrested and charged with murder, though he had no memory of the events. Haunted by nightmares and convinced he had killed Leah, he grappled with the chaos of his mind. The letter Leah had written vanished, leaving him grasping for the truth. Meanwhile, Leah began anew under a different identity in another country, aware of the destruction left in her wake, but convinced it was her only path to survival. The narrative raised crucial questions. Was Leah truly alive, or was her disappearance a meticulously premeditated murder? Cameron's mental state deteriorated in jail, blending reality with terrifying nightmares. He began experiencing strange phenomena. Whispers filled the night, and he thought he saw Leah in the corner of his cell. Each waking moment slipped further into madness. Cameron's anxiety spiraled. Doubts about Leah's love consumed him, especially after receiving an anonymous letter stating, "She was never on your side." Horrific possibilities raced through his mind. He convinced himself that Leah and Randall had conspired from the beginning, manipulating his trust for their own twisted ambitions. Details he once overlooked now seemed to fit into a sinister scheme. Cameron felt like a pawn in a game played behind his back, ensnared by paranoia. He grew increasingly distrustful of everyone around him, police, guards, even his lawyer. One night, he heard Lee's voice again, urging him to seek her, driven by fear and longing. He ventured into the darkness, grappling with doubts about her true fate and their shared history. On November 17, 2012, everything escalated. Haunted by paranoia and dread, Cameron confronted Leah upon her early return home. She appeared exhausted, as if battling her inner demons. Each glance she cast at the clock and out the window intensified his suspicions. When Randall's vehicle arrived, Cameron's rage erupted, consumed by the chaos in his mind. He could no longer bear the torment of betrayal and visions clouding his thoughts. Believing that their encounter was part of a scheme to destroy him once and for all, in his opinion, Randall and Leah were now allies working together to harm his life. As Randall went into the home, Cameron was already standing at the doorway of the living room, his stare filled with wrath as cautiously approached. Leah and Randall never taking his eyes off them, Leah realized something was wrong, and her heart plummeted. She knew this was a moment of truth, but she had no clue how. Far things had gone in her husband's head. You knew from the beginning. Cameron remarked, his voice calm, but full of anger. You both plot this. Leah glanced at him, in doubt, her eyes filled with terror. She wanted to explain, but Cameron stopped her, not giving her a chance to say it was all a lie, our entire existence a fake. You were constantly with him, and I, his voice shook with fury, I was only a pawn in your game. At that moment, Leah understood. She could no longer deny the reality. She took a long breath. Cameron, I should have told you everything sooner. She started, her voice cracking with sorrow. Cameron, in a frenzy of anger, he rushed at Lou. Randall attempted to intercede. Fury. Cameron pushed Randall with such force that he almost collapsed. His hands were around Lee's neck. Her eyes widened in terror as she realized he had lost control of himself. You've damaged everything. Leah struggled to break free, but his hold was too tight in her. Last minutes, she said, I wanted to assist, but her words faded and her body became slack. Randall finally managed to interfere, but it was too late. Leah lay on the floor dead. Randall, his head was blank. He couldn't fathom what he had just done. What have you done? Randall yelled, his voice, without uttering a word, carefully walked away from Lee's body. In his head, everything was a muddled love, hatred, treachery, and terror. That night for Cameron Lockwood. Cameron attempted to detect a pulse, but there was nothing in that instant. Pure terror seized him. He understood what he had done. This wasn't simply an accident. Cameron escaped the home, leaving Lila's dead on the living room floor. He hurried outside, got into his vehicle, and raced away far. The next day, neighbors noticed the unusual silence at the Lockwood home, leading to the discovery of Lila's body by the police. With Cameron missing and no signs of forced entry, investigators turned their focus on him as the primary suspect. Evidence, including Lila's communications with Randall, hinted at her fear and anxiety regarding her hidden identity, deepening the mystery surrounding her death. For 3 days, Cameron evaded capture, haunted by guilt and regret, until he finally surrendered to the police. His trial became a media sensation, exploring themes of betrayal, identity, and the complexities of love. The prosecution portrayed Cameron as a man driven by suppressed rage, while the defense argued that Lila's secret had provoked his violent outburst. Ultimately, Cameron was convicted of involuntary manslaughter, sentenced to 15 years in prison. Meanwhile, Lila's family established a foundation in her honor, advocating for transgender rights and supporting others facing discrimination. Over the years, Cameron underwent therapy, reflecting on his actions and the toxic masculinity that had shaped his worldview. As he sought redemption, Lila's story became a poignant reminder of the importance of honesty, acceptance, and the struggles against